Welcome back to the Design Boss Dialogue podcast, the interior design business podcast for women who are ready to build businesses that feel as good on the inside as they look on the outside. I'm your host, Lisa Marie El-Khadraoui, and today we are episode 96, the feast or famine trap. So I had a question come up on a call recently that I think so many of you are going to relate to. A designer said to me, the reason I keep getting caught in feast and famine is that I take on so much work, I get completely swallowed by the projects that I never actually find the time to market or generate new leads. And the second she said it, I could see the other women on the call nodding along as well. So if this is you, if you've ever finished a big project and felt that little flicker of panic of wondering, when is the next one going to come in? This episode today is for you. So here's what happens. And I want to walk through it slowly because I think the pattern is so familiar that most of us stop actually noticing it happening. So work comes in, sometimes in a big wave, 2 or 3 projects landing close together, which feels absolutely wonderful at first. And you throw everything you have at delivering it because you want to do right by your clients. That instinct is completely understandable. You're not being irresponsible by focusing on delivery, you're being conscientious. But while you're deep in the project, sourcing, managing trades, doing mood boards, handling any hiccups, being present for your client, something quietly stops happening in the background. Visibility stops, lead generation stops, pipeline building stops. Not because you've decided to deliberately pause it, but because there simply isn't any room left in your week once the delivery work has taken what it needs. So projects end, there's nothing behind it, no warm pipeline, no inquiries gently waiting in your inbox, no content that's been building awareness while your head's down in the work. And suddenly you find yourself in famine, scrambling, anxious, wondering where the next client is actually going to come from. And even though just weeks earlier you were fully booked and seemingly thriving, this cycle repeats itself over and over and over across a year. And most designers assume it's simply the nature of the industry. That interior design is inherently feast or famine, and it's just how creative businesses actually work. But I call bullshit on this, and I want to gently challenge that belief today because I don't think it's true. I think it's a structural issue, okay? And the reason this happens is because marketing and lead generation get quietly treated as something you do whenever you have the time, rather than something being built permanently into the rhythm of the business, regardless of how busy your delivery gets. So think about how most of us were taught, whether directly or just through absorbing the culture of this industry. Client work comes first. It always has. It always will. There's a real person, a real space, a deadline. Marketing behind that then feels by comparison completely soft, because if we have a real client with real needs and real demands, ultimately they have to come first. That piece of content, that editorial, that PR, that blog, that can wait because there's no person behind it. And I'll get round to it once all the things have calmed down a little. But here's the problem with that belief. Things rarely calm down entirely on their own. And even when they do, by the time you've finally got a little bit of breathing room behind you, there's already a gap sitting there with absolutely nothing in it, okay? You're now trying to generate leads from a standing start. At the exact moment, you also need the income to keep flowing back in. That's an incredibly stressful position to market from, and it rarely produces your best work. The businesses that don't experience feast and famine in the same dramatic way have built something structurally different underneath it. They have built consistent, ongoing visibility that runs quietly in the background, regardless of how busy the delivery side of the business gets in any given week. Crucially, it's not reliant on motivation, energy, or whatever time happens to be left at the end of the day alongside it, okay? It's not something they have to remember to do. It is structural. That is the key here. It's simply part of the rhythm of how business operates. In the same way, invoicing or onboarding a client, it's part of that rhythm. So I want to bring this down to something practical because I don't want this to just feel like a nice idea with no shape to it. Imagine your business across a full 90-day cycle rather than week to week. If visibility is only happening when you happen to have spare capacity, it'll show up in unpredictable bursts. A flurry of posts one week, silence for the next 3 weeks, and then a slightly desperate push right before you need new work to land in. That inconsistency is completely confusing for the people following you too. It's hard to build trust and awareness with an audience when your presence is that unpredictable. Now, imagine the alternative, okay? A small protected amount of visibility that happens every single week of those beautiful 90 days, that quarter, no matter what else is happening in delivery. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. It might be far smaller during your busiest weeks and slightly more expansive during your quieter ones, but it never disappears entirely because it's treated as a non-negotiable. The same way you wouldn't skip invoicing a client just because you were busy on site that week. This is also where batching comes so valuable, particularly ahead when you go into a period you know you're going to have a delivery heavy week. If you know a big project is about to consume the next 6 weeks of your capacity, that's exactly the moment to prepare some visibility in advance. So you can continue running quietly in the background while your hands are full elsewhere. And it's the difference between hoping you'll find time for marketing and knowing it's already been taken care of before it's needed. Now, here's the piece of the puzzle that I don't think gets talked about enough. And it's actually just as important as the marketing side. Feast and famine isn't only caused by inconsistent visibility. It's very often made worse, sometimes actually dramatically worse, by inconsistent, underpriced work. Here's what I mean. If your pricing is guesswork, if you're quoting each project from scratch, slightly nervous each time, occasionally underpricing just to feel confident that you're going to actually win the job, then even when you are fully booked, you're not necessarily fully paid. You can be run completely off your feet with projects and still not be earning what the volume of work actually justifies. That's its own quiet version of famine, hiding inside what you would consider feast. I want to let that land for a moment. It's its own quiet version of famine, hiding inside what it looks like feast. You naturally think that you are earning, you're on top of the world, but you're actually undercharging. And I see this constantly. A designer takes on more and more projects to compensate for the fact that each one isn't paying quite what it should. She fills her diary completely and she's still anxious about the money. She's still working evenings. She's still wondering why being so busy doesn't actually translate into the income she's expecting. And the problem there isn't lead generation at all. It's that her pricing structure was never built to protect her time or her profit in the first place. This is exactly why the pricing conversation and the momentum conversation have to sit beside each other in this, because building consistent visibility only solves half the equation. It's what landing from that visibility is underpriced, and you simply recreate feast or famine in a completely different way. It's being busy, but not actually thriving. And this is really where thinking in 90-day cycles rather than single weeks becomes so powerful, and where pricing has to be part of that cycle of thinking too. So instead of asking yourself on a Tuesday morning mid-project, do I actually have time to market this week? Which will almost always come back as a firm no when you're deeply in the delivery work. You ask a completely different question. You ask, what does visibility need to look like across this entire quarter in a way that holds regardless of how busy any individual week becomes? And is what I'm charging actually building the kind of momentum I want, or am I just staying busy? Okay, I want you to ask yourself those questions. That might mean building simple referral systems that continue working quietly even when you're not actively thinking about them. It might mean protecting one small, unmovable slice of time each week purely for visibility. It might mean batching content ahead of a period you know is going to be really intense because you've got installations, you've got project meetings, or you've got big onboarding to do. But it also means revisiting your pricing structure with real intention, rather than leaving it exactly as it was when you first set it, sometimes even 2-3 years ago. And the specific methods matter far less than the underlying principle. Lead generation and pricing cannot be allowed to be two things that quietly slip the moment you get busy, because that's precisely what creates both sides of famine waiting for you on the other end. Feast or famine feels like bad luck when you're in the middle of it. It feels completely random. Like some months, the universe just simply favours you, and others it completely doesn't. But it isn't bad luck. It's what happens when visibility is treated as optional, when pricing is left to guesswork rather than structure. The moment you build both into your business as genuine non-negotiable foundations, that cycle really does start to break. If pricing is the piece that's resonating most for you today, if you've recognized yourself in that description of being fully booked, but somehow still not feeling paid what you're worth, I want to point you towards something. I've put together Fully Booked and Highly Paid, a 3-course program built specifically to help you price with confidence, protect your time, and stop the guesswork once and for all. You're going to find the link in the show notes, and it is my profitability pricing method to stop you reinventing the wheel. You instantly, from watching module 2 and then going back and watching module 1, will support you in transforming your prices immediately in your stage 1 delivery. And there's a bonus in module 3 for show homes. Dive into it. It's in the show notes. You're going to absolutely love it. That's it for today's episode of Design Boss Dialogue, the interior design business podcast for women who are ready to build businesses that feel as good on the inside as they look on the outside. And if you've experienced this cycle yourself, I would love to hear about it. Share this episode on Instagram and tag me, Design Boss Diary. I am Lisa Marie El-Khadraoui. I'm your interior design business coach and mentor, building feel-good businesses with soulful leadership as the intersection of it. I will see you next week for another beautiful, powerful, packed podcast.